Thank you for asking about this. Money trauma is definitely a real thing, and it's something that I work with a lot with my clients. And it can manifest in a lot of different ways. Excuse me. So there's a phrase that I've heard, one that money is an excellent servant, but is a poor master, meaning that you have to be able to master your emotions and tell your money what to do for you. However, if you sort of let money sort of run you, then you're not going to be responsible with your emotions. And I find that a lot of people have emotional trauma and emotional connections with money. So one example of trauma is one example is, not being in control of your money. And by the way, not being in control of your emotions. I'm sorry. And so, by the way, what I was going to say, if you're not in control of emotions, typically most people that I work with that are not in control of their emotions have problems with managing money, and they also have problems around intimacy. And so, but anyhow, what I was going to say, if you can't manage your emotions, or you find it difficult to manage your emotion, you may look for instant boost or instant gratification. And I honestly think that that's how, Amazon became so popular during COVID. I think the Amazon phenomenon is one example of how a lot of people were going through emotional distress due to social isolation during COVID. And so Amazon became so convenient as an instant gratification boost. There were a lot of people that were ordering stuff that they don't need because they felt like they needed an instant pick-me-up, and you could push a button and it would be at your door by, within a few hours, or at the very latest within the next day. That was when Prime was priming, okay? And so that's an example of okay, I need these gifts every few, hours, days, or whatever. And that's going to help me feel better. It's like Christmas essentially every day. And so that typically helps people have something to look forward to, is that instant gratification boost, because they're having challenges with emotion. There are people who feel like, they don't deserve to make money. So they feel guilty for being successful and making money. And that also comes from a family narrative where family will typically shame or make people feel bad for making money. And so a lot of times people that have this shameful narrative around making money, a lot of times they try to pour back into their family of origin, who will then, they just kind of want gimme, gimme, gimme. It's never enough. And they want you to prioritize them over you. And so you tend to feel guilty when not supporting them, when not sort of helping them come up on their lifestyle. So that is the expectation there. And another thing that we work through with respect to money is narratives around money. So, for example, I think a narrative that most of us have heard, at least once or twice, is money is the root of all evil. So that's a very common narrative. And the way that I work through that with clients is first of all, where did that narrative come from? Who's telling you that? Was mom, dad, or who's telling you that, right? And so we sort of process that out. And we also say we can't make that person's narrative your narrative. That person's experience with money is no longer your experience. So we also work on sort of releasing that and creating your own experience with money. But we also talk about the ways in which that narrative sort of manifests in behavior. So, for example, if you feel like money is the root of all evil, you may have this sort of crazy spending habit. So, for example, you may get paid on Friday, and by the time that following Monday rolls around, you don't know where your money has gone. Your money has just sort of burnt through your hands, and you can't even say what you spent it on. And it went as fast as it came, and then you're back to being broke again. So if you're constantly broke, that may be another one. There are people who seek validation through money. So for example, if you are in a poor environment is one, right? And so, there are people that live in a poor environment, poor community, and there's no like plan or no sort of, we can't see a way out. And this isn't me just being mean or being judgmental. I'm just sort of talking here, but a phenomenon that happens with people that are living in those circumstances is sometimes they'll become what's called hood rich, right? And so what they will do is they will sort of flex within their means. So that means that they will, if they get some money, with tax return time or, other things like that, gifts and things like that, then they'll spend it on like designer clothes. They'll spend it on like rims or a flashy like wrap for their car or things like that. So that's one way that people will do that. There's also people that were conditioned very similar to what I was talking about before, where like their family expects them to, support them and get them out of their community and things like that. And so, you may find yourself sort of giving endlessly, and this happens a lot with immigrants too, where you just sort of give and give so much of your finances and so much of yourself to your family. And the expectation is like, if you don't give them your money and your resources, then they no longer love and accept you. And so you learn very quickly that love and things like that is very conditional with your family. And this happens a lot too with, and I've worked a lot on a lot of, with a lot of felons who have fraud cases. And fraud, it's not all the time, but fraud around finances and things like that is oftentimes generational. Fraud, boosting, stealing and things like that are also often very generational, because those are transactional types of crimes, and usually a lot of times families want you to continue committing fraud because you're giving them stuff. And you learn very quickly, like if you're not committing crimes and you're not doing stuff for their validation and approval, they will quickly discard you. So that's an example of narcissistic abuse. You also have narcissists, right, that I work a lot with, that want constant validation. So they will oftentimes spend and flex and support lifestyles of women and other people like that to get that external validation, right, and to also get that outside ego boost. So I hope that this helps, but that's just some of the ways. So that's not exclusive or that's not exhaustive, I'll say that. So there's so many ways that money trauma can show up, but those are just some of the ways.